I'm about to start the Hangout, so uh, I'm getting everything situated. So hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Excellent. So I'm checking to make sure that I'm seeing stuff on. I've got a pad on my right side. I'm going to raise my volume a little. I need to check my volume. All right. Sounds like I'm getting decent volume. I'll try to get a little closer. All right. If you have any questions for me, then I'll have to make sure I can see it. So we will get started in just a minute. I'm going to share my screen. All right, entire screen. I'm in a hotel, so there might be some lag with my my actual screening. So it's going to keep going like that until I get my my PowerPoint up. My system is actually a little just takes a little while for it to kick in. I'm checking my pad again on the other side just to make sure that you guys could hear me. I'm checking my pad again on the other side. All right, just to make sure that you guys could hear me. All right. We're at 6 o'clock, but I'm going to give us just a couple more minutes to make sure that if anybody is coming on, that they get to be on. So almost there. Today I'm kind of going to do this more as a lesson than I am a full presentation. And I want to get as much feedback as possible to see where you are, see what kind of that may be going on that I can answer at the same time as delivering my thought processes. So I don't really have like a boatload, if you will, of slides for that reason, just to make sure that I could just keep up with everybody, all questions. You could be looking this through two ways. One is through the website, and that is the Mastermind Safety Consultant webinar site, or you could actually be looking at it from the YouTube channel. So if you do want to take a look at the YouTube channel, which is, and I should remember this, but if you go to youtube.com, you could actually just go ahead and open up a second browser, and you would have to type into that system just my actual OSHA compliance help title. So if you get OSHA compliance help, you could see this on that application as well. So it's possible that you could see me through both. So I've got just after if you do need to ask a question, again, just type it in. There should be a chat box somewhere in there, and I kind of have that up so I can see that as well. So good evening. Thank you for spending some time. I'm doing this one late because Eastern Standard Time is right around 8. However, I'm in Denver this week, so I'm on Mountain Time. So the Mountain Time, it's only 6 o'clock for me. So I like the actual 6 o'clock, especially if you're still working at your regular job and now you actually have to sneak in some training on your private things. So this will help too. I want to make sure I give you guys as much as a good understanding of where we're going to be for this one. So they're going to have, as much as I can, my thought process in how I use or price things. So as I'm pricing it, I'm figuring out some different variables as far as what price goes best with what, some considerations that I have for each price. So that's how we're going to go over this. So I want to make sure that you could quantify your worth as a safety consultant. And I do it through several different ways, either by project or I do it by hour. I also do half and full day rates too. And that really depends on who the actual client is. So some of this could be client-based as well. So I'm going to kind of show you how to do this. When I switch over to my laptop version too, because I am going to try to show you some things online, it's slightly delayed because of the laptop I have. It takes a little bit longer for you to actually see what I've done. So let's work that. All right. So the first thing is going to be typical expenses. So if you could see the typical expenses slide, then we're all in the same place. If you cannot, then go ahead and send me a little message that you're not seeing what I'm seeing. But it is the slide I have right now. The heading says typical expenses. So if you are running your business, you're going to have your own expenses that you're going to have to worry about outside of what you would have gotten if you were in a public sector or private sector employment. So I've got here a few things. We've got your salary, so you got to pay yourself. Personal expenses that are paid, basically your line item there. If you have rent, you got to include that. Utilities, office supplies, promotional materials, all those things got to be included in there. If you do need salary for other people that are going to be doing work for you, then you got to add that in too in your price. So as you're thinking about all these different scenarios and all these different little added things that you should look for, truly it is based on per project. However, this should always be back in your mind. All your expenses that you now have to flip the bill for, that you didn't have to when you were a salary employee somewhere else, or even if you were an hourly worker for someone else. There's a model out there called pay yourself first. And this is a variation of that type of modeling that you see here. So that type of modeling under the pay yourself first is you as the owner should get a salary. I just gave these numbers, and starting your business, you may have a less owner salary as opposed to everything else, but I put in an actual percentage here of owner salary. So that's what I'm going to get, and then that's going to pay my personal bills. And so that is a mindset that I took, that I needed to shift in personally. And one of these things with when you start your own business, you know you're everything. You are pretty much going to be the accountant, and you're going to be just about every line as you need. You're going to do it. So that salary to yourself is very important. But if you're setting aside, some 10% for utilities, 25% for some expenses for whatever it costs, your marketing functions, your travels, your per diem, corporate savings. That's all stuff that whenever you get a project, whenever you get your actual quote accepted, and now you've got a contract, part of your pricing should have included this, but when you do get the money in, then it's always prudent to go ahead and do some sort of structure where you know that you're going to get some sort of salary, and you know what that salary is, so then you can start your budget and the life stuff, right? So that's part of the idea, part of the mindset of what you're going to do with your pricing. So prior to getting into the pricing model and everything else that's going to come with that, one of the first things you need to do is you got to nail down that meeting. So that very first meeting that you have with the client, that is one of the most important steps to everything. It's a step to proposal. It's an important step to your pricing. So it's truly important that when you sit into that client meeting, that you're there with active listening ears. You're going to open yourself up to understanding exactly what's going on in that client's field, because they're going to talk to you about a need that they have. So as they're reaching out to you for their needs, then you now are going to have to interpret exactly what they need. And then with the interpretation of what they need, that's going to set you off with your prices and your quotes. I actually had an issue once. It was a big city in my area, and it's a very, very big city in my area, and I live in South Florida. They asked me to give them a quote. So I'm here and I'm listening to the actual person that was trying to get me hired. And the things that I'm hearing that they want, it can't really be done. So let me give you an example of what they're wanting and the idea they had. The idea that they wanted to do was a job safety analysis on each job title. So let's say, for instance, if I was Parks and Recreation. So as being Parks and Recreation, that would be my my department. They wanted to have a job safety analysis for each job description for this this big utility is what it was. There actually was a municipality, a full city. So I'm thinking parks, recreation, the maintenance, police, fire, and the client in the meeting was truly thinking that you could do a job safety analysis per job title, but you can't. A job safety analysis is per task. So for instance, Parks and Recs, one day they could be trimming trees, next day they're mowing, next day they may be just, or during the day they may be cleaning the facilities out, bathrooms. Each one of those jobs needs a job safety analysis. So through the active listening in the initial meeting, I really had to explain to the client that, okay, this is truly what you're saying and what you're asking, as opposed to, or I should say what you mean as opposed to what you're asking. So that is one benefit for active listening. So if you're active listening, you're going to get to kind of pin down what the clients are saying. So don't drift too much and try to anticipate what they want, but just closely listen to what they're asking, clarify things as you need, just so you guys will all be in the same vein of thought when you get done. And I've seen plenty of times where it's not apples to apples anymore, from what the client initially wanted to what at the very end you come together and say, okay, so this is what we need. And that initial meeting is very important for not only setting a price, you're gonna hear key words from them as to their willingness to pay. So I've had a couple of clients who they didn't care how much it cost. They needed to have this. There was a driver big enough for them that it's okay. I will pay. Just give me this product. Give me the service. I need it now, which is great. You don't want to take advantage of that, but it's great to know that you'll get paid your worth. And then there's other clients who, they don't even want to have the initial meeting. They want to get you over the phone, and on the phone, they're asking you to, what's this going to cost? What's this going to cost? What's this going to cost? So that means that's all they care about is what's it going to cost. So I always veer away from that, and I suggest that you do that as well, because you can't think of all these different factors I'm going to mention and all these expenses and break it all down right there on the phone on that phone call, and they keep pressing and pressing and pressing because they want you to give them a quote and hope that it's going to be a quote that is low enough that they're going to accept. So that is the initial meeting to set everything off. So in that initial meeting, it's really going to get me thinking about how long is this job going to be. So how long am I going to pretty much spend time on this project? So if I'm thinking how long am I spending time on this project, then I could do it through, as you see on the screen, setting an hourly rate. So this hourly rate here that I'm just giving, I just arbitrarily picked a number that a management person might be making, middle management person hourly. So if you're getting $35 an hour, you have no business overhead. So that $35 an hour is just basically going to your family expenses. However, now that you're running a business, you got family expenses and business overhead. So you can just decide, I want to make 2, 3, 4x of my current salary to account for my business overhead. So a few slides back, you saw all those different things that come up with the business overhead. So just decide to do it. You don't need any real hidden justification. Just because I was close to thinking, okay, 2x should be good because it's the most money I've ever seen an hour. However, I found out very quickly that when you're running the whole show yourself, that may not be enough. So you could do the 3x, you could do the 4x. How I like to think of consulting is, if you are consulting, you are a professional. You're a professional if you're a degree professional, or if you're a professional just by the mere fact that you have experiences that you have gained throughout a several amount of years, whatever that is, or you're a professional through some recognized standing that you have. That is worth something. So don't feel bad about saying 2, 3, 4x, whatever, because your past company may have been paying that already. So as a consultant, I would put you in the same position as a specialist, such as an engineer, whatever they're making hourly, a specialist as in a lawyer, a doctor in that way. So yes, lawyers and doctors, they do take an account for their actual cost that they have for education, but believe you me, there is a true cost for education when it comes to safety and health as well. So don't discount that for yourself. Just go ahead and make that one of the things that you're thinking of as being truly a cost of doing business. Therefore, you set your rates. Go ahead and set your hourly rates. And I'm using this as a base. I'm not saying this to put everything that you have project-wise by hour, but I am using this as a base because it does make some numbers a little bit easier going forward. So here's another one that I use. I use a market analysis, and the market analysis is very tricky. However, it can be very rewarding if you get it right. So, for instance, I do a lot of risk management plan, which is akin to process safety management. So I remember at one point I was trying to see exactly how much it would cost uh, for a consultant to actually go ahead and prepare a risk management plan for a city, for a county, for something like that. So what I ended up doing was I did what's called a Boolean search on Google. So a Boolean search is a search that you do quotation marks around the key phrase that you're using. You could say risk management plan, not something else, or including something else, and you put that in quotes. Because if I didn't have this in quotes, Google is going to search risk by itself, it'll search management by itself, it'll search plan by itself, and so on and so forth. So I need to group those ideas together in order for Google to know what I'm talking about. You could use this for Bing or any of the other services, but I'm a Google guy, so that's how I did this. So with that Boolean search, I was able to find actual contracts, and in this case, it was contracts with cities and counties. So let's say you wanted to find a price for a service. Let's say you want to now go do confined space entry training. So I would do a search that says confined space entry, do parentheses on that, and then comma, and let's just say pricing or prices, and put that also in parentheses. Do that search, see what comes back. And then if you want to get more specific, you could do that search with your location and see if there's anyone locally that's doing this. And that's going to help you start doing a market analysis. If you are an OSHA outreach trainer, there's an OSHA outreach site, and I should have looked it up before I did this, but I'm pretty sure it's like outreachtrainer.org, and I think it's trainers with an S. So I just looked it up on my pad, so it is outreachtrainers with an S.org. And what you would do, there's a top right corner of that site, you would do a search by your zip code. So whatever your zip code is, do a search there. And that search within, they say 100, 300, 200 miles, whatever you put in, you could actually search and you'll see other people that are doing OSHA outreach services in your zip code or within that that area. Not only can you see that, you can see their training schedule there, and you'll see what kind of training they're doing and their prices. So that's a market analysis for specifically any OSHA type outreach training. So that's outreachtrainer.org. There's no fee. I would also include that in your marketing. So set up a profile, and then you now could also advertise. I've got several people that came to me for outreach training, especially 30-hour general industry in my area, through that site. So I can tell right now, I looked it up in my area, did my zip code. I see one person doing a 40-hour HAZWOPER training, and his price is $500 per person. So I just got that. So now if I know in my area for a HAZWOPER 40-hour, if I'm doing that training, one guy's at 500, and I could go look at some other guys. And then I can also do a profile of the person, so I could see apples to apples comparison of their services versus my services. So that's a good way to actually check that out, see who's in your area. And let's say you're going to move or you're going to do the service throughout the country, you know, you can go ahead and do that. As a side note, I'm actually still looking at that OSHA training website. I'm on here, and they say trainers without posted classes in the proximity. I actually came up as the top search there for trainers without a class schedule. So if I wanted to be even higher on this list, just schedule some of my classes that I'm doing, and I would. I actually have some classes I need to schedule, and then they'll put me towards the top of the list, and that's just this particular site. So just wanted to point that out to you. So you can kind of take a good look at that, especially if you're under OSHA jurisdiction. If you're across the country or even across the world, there might be some other similar type system that you could look up, so you could get the idea. The things that I'm giving you here, sure, some of it is US specific. However, a lot of this can go back into some of your other countries that you may be listening to me at. So I'm down to bullet number 3. I have called people for quotes before just to see what my prices will be and related to them. And then also, I've talked to close colleagues, especially in groups like the American Society of Safety Engineers, ASSE, which is now a global, and it has been a global group of safety professionals. You could ask them, hey, how much have you paid for a service like this? Or how much would you pay for a service like that? That's okay. That helps you with your market analysis. So it doesn't hurt to do that as well. So that is a big portion of making sure that you're in the same price range as other people. Sometimes that doesn't matter. I'll tell you that. Because you may have an area that everyone's priced so low, but it's not sustainable for you. That's okay if you price yourself higher than that, because again, it reflects what you are giving to the table. What are your experiences, your education, your expenses, and some companies, I just said, you can't afford me. Not to them, but just to for me, I just put it out there. This is my price, and this is it. I stand by my price. So let's go on to the project details, and I keep checking. So again, if you're looking at this on the website, which is mastermind.safetyconsultant.xyz, and there's a webinar tab there. So if you're on that webinar tab and you do see questions, I could answer you there. So I'm looking at those. And then if you're on YouTube, I could answer some questions on that side as well. So just want to let you guys know I will be checking those as I go along. So back to the pricing, you had a chance to kind of look this over. These are some of the considerations I'm thinking of when I'm doing a project pricing. So project pricing, the scope of services, they learned from the actual meeting, the initial meeting. The next one is, for me, how many hours am I going to take for this? Is there any travel? Do I outsource anything? What's the research time going to be? Do I personally want to make a certain amount for this project? And that's just as valid as anything else. So I do consider that. And of course, if you're going to get this project knowing that you are going to outsource it right away to someone else who's going to manage the project, but you're just bidding for it, that's another separate consideration. I'm going to try to put some math to this project pricing, and I don't have math for everything, but this one I do. So this project pricing math, this is kind of what it looks like. So if I am thinking that my project is going to be $25 an hour, hourly rate of $125, I've got total expenses that I worked out, going to be $175, travel and per diem. I usually do my travel and my per diem by my zip code. So whatever distance that I feel comfortable is a day drive. I don't really have much travel and per diem and by day for me, it's an hour, hour and a half. So if I'm taking an hour and a half drive to go to someone, that's mileage, that's wear and tear on the car, and so on. And then if I have to stay overnight, now there's a cost for the hotel, so that's where I have the travel and per diem. So if I don't have a cost to stay overnight, then I just charge mileage and I put that in the price. And you may do a line item for whatever the price is as far as travel and per diem, or your just your actual mileage. That's fine. However, I tell you the truth, I've done it both ways, but the most successful I've done it is if I do the travel and per diem price separately. I've been more successful for that. So next thing is follow-up services. So if I'm adding this project, the time it takes and all those other things, my total project price is $39,000. So almost $4,000 for this project price. I personally don't round up as much to or round up or down to whatever the nearest dollar figure that's even. I'd leave it at this number, 975. So to the person receiving the quote, it looks like it's truly a calculated value as opposed to saying just a flat 4,000. I don't know if that makes any sense to you there, but I have done that before. And I still do that. I do that most recently. I've done that with, well, actually, I do it all the time. So that's what I use. So I don't really round up to like 4,000 to make it look even. You know, I'll just go ahead and leave it at 397 with 39.75. So that's the pricing math that I would kind of use for this. And then when you go back to one of the first slides, then for the owner price is, you know, 30%, and then you do all the breakdown, and then you have some room to survive the feast or famine of consulting. If you pay yourself first, yes, I put it down as 30%, and then the rest goes to the business, so to keep growing the business. So the project price, so you can see how I'm kind of building on it. I first did the hourly price, which led me to a project price, and now after the project price, the next thing I want to do to adjust the project price is I'm going to assess the actual hazards related to this job. So if this job in, let's say the project is a highly hazardous industry, I think of that through the OSHA standard, where they have identified 67 high hazard, high risk industries, and in those industries, they are the ones that, the small businesses, 20 to 249, they're the ones that have to do the record keeping 300A form. All the other small businesses, 20 to 249, don't have to do that, and that's because they themselves aren't as high risk as these 67 identified industries. So what I do for my pricing is I could add a little factor to this. So let's say my 39,000 is too much to a small company. So I would reduce a factor there, and you could put in whatever factor you want as a price reduction. You could do, you know, I could reduce it company size by 500. So every time I see a little marker that says company size, then I know I'm going to reduce it by whatever my cost is by 500. If my hourly commitment is different, then I can reduce that too. So this is how you do it. It's up to you to figure out your other side. But for me, I look for company size as being a reduction factor, or I could increase it by company size, my hourly commitment to this job, and then my expenses, insurance, any follow-up. Then I'm going to adjust this by the hazards that it's going to be presented to me. So that is one of the ways that I kind of take the hourly rate into the project rate into a hazard-based rate, and just kind of keep that all going together, just to make sure that I'm considering all factors. And if you do that NAICS code list, you could go to OSHA.gov, and under the record keeping section, you should have that in the record keeping section of OSHA.gov. Training prices. So training prices, and I don't have a whole bunch more slides, but the training prices are a little bit different. So I think of, yes, however many hours it takes to develop the class. I think about how many hours it takes to deliver the class, all the materials that I may have to put together and print, and if I'm developing the material, then of course I could choose to make a workbook out of that. And if I do make a workbook, am I giving it to them to keep, or am I giving them a reference book that I could actually add some development costs to it? So here's my loaner book, here's a loaner CFR if I'm using the code of federal regulations. So you could go through class with me. It's $5 or $8 to use the CFRs, and then some people might go through and they use them and they think, oh man, I need some of these, and then now you could upsell them to actually say, hey, if you want it, it's going to be an additional $20, $30, how much it costs you to do it with a little percent over. But if they don't want to buy it afterwards, or they're returning your training material, you already have that development cost kicked in there. So now you're going to, every time you do this class, you're getting a little bit something that is going to help you with the development. The development cost, if you're going to do this on a larger scale, let's say you're going to outsource this training, it's something big enough that it's a 4-day or 3-day class, and now you want to hire trainers to train the class that you developed, you put in a development cost, a fee to them that they're going to give to you every time they develop the class. So you could give them the material that they need to teach the class, you send it to them, and now they have purchased into that, so they could either rent it themselves or give it away. So that's another way that you could still get your development costs back. So don't just charge your hourly rate for speaking, or your sometimes, and especially if I'm working with an association, my training prices may be a half-day rate or a full-day rate. And I have done in the past given a full-day rate of 8 hours to a 10-hour OSHA outreach class. So I'll tell the association I'm working with, as a courtesy to you, I'm not going to charge you 10 hours, but I'll charge you 8 hours, my daily rate, to do a 10-hour class. So they actually make some money there too. So that might be a way for you to think about pricing as well. So if I am thinking of pricing and I'm doing it hourly, and I want to give someone a half-day rate versus a full-day rate, I'm not going to really use my hourly salary for that one if I'm thinking that way. So for instance, if I'm doing that 125 and I want to do a half-day rate, then that brings me right to $500 for the half-day rate. And then of course, if you're going to do the full 8-day rate, then that's $1,000. So you're basically doubling that. That's okay, but that half-day rate for the 4 hours of work, $500, is really good. However, it doesn't take into account the other things like the development cost and any other things that comes up with travel and per diem and the material. So I would actually, some people have raised it, some have lowered it, it's your call. But for me, I've actually gone up slightly on my half and full day rate with people that don't know my hourly rate. But for people that do know my hourly rate, then I'll go down slightly to give them a feel like they're catching that break, if you understand it. Because a key is to be flexible, and that's one of the things I do mention later on in my summary is, definitely you need to be flexible. But before I get into the next section, I'll let the presentation catch up with itself. I'm also going to give a quick check. So bear with me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen really quick so I could look at any Q&As that may be out there. And if there is any Q&As, then I'm going to answer. And then I'll come back to this one slide over here. So I am not seeing any questions right now. I noticed how close I was because of my speaker. I want to make sure you guys can hear me. So right now I do not see any answers on the group chat, and I'm also checking the other one, so I don't see any answers there, questions there, excuse me. So I'm going to go back and share my screen so you guys could get the last bit of some of the pricing, and then I'll check again for some questions and answers. So let me share the screen one more time, and then we'll get the rest of this. All right. So you should be looking at the consulting services page. So if you get up to the consulting services page, then I'm just going to give you kind of an idea of some of these services and how much I would charge, or at least the pricing thought process to charging. How's that? So let's say someone calls you for an audit and they want to do a facility audit. I would charge by the size. How many establishments am I going to? What do they do by their NAICS code, which is the North American Industry Classification System code. And so if it's high hazard versus low hazards, and then I'm getting an idea of how much time it's going to take to actually put the report together and then disseminate it back to them. So that's all in the pricing. So I'm not going to say I'm going to give you a half-day rate to do the audit or a full-day rate to do the audit, unless I'm going to add some time, let's say a 3-hour minimum, to actually write the report. So if someone truly wants an answer over the phone and I don't want to lose the client, I may be pushed to saying, okay, I'm going to give you a half-day rate or a full-day rate to do the audit, because based on your company size, you guys are pretty small, or based on your hazards, you guys are low hazard, so I'm going to give you here's my day rate. However, this day rate does not include the time for my travel, and it does not include the time for giving you a report. So this is the day rate for the audit, and I'm going to give you the rate for the time of travel. Either it's going to be the per diem per day, or it's going to be the mileage. And then you're going to have your report time. I use 3 hours as a guidance. Sometimes it takes me 5 hours to do a real detailed report, depending on what they are. Inspections can be the same thing. If you are forced to do a half-day rate or a full-day rate, know those rates in hand, so you can always say what your day rate, half-day rate is. But then you also want to add some things to the cost for protecting yourself from travel, per diem, other expenses, or materials that you have to pay for, because your day rates should reflect how much you want to make, not with expenses. Worksite monitoring. A lot of people, all they need to do is go to a job site and then just go look, make sure all the workers are being safe, maybe do a couple of tailgate meetings. So that might be broken down also into an hourly thing first, but I would also include the pricing of if I'm going to sub this out. So I would think how much of a nice hourly rate is for a subcontractor, and then I'm going to add some percentage over that for me and the business. So that's what I would do for that situation. Written programs, a lot of people need written programs. So written programs, I usually give them a certain rate, and that rate is an hourly rate, but it's actually lower than my normal hourly rate because usually I'm working off a template. But I give them a little lower that, but I also give them a minimum hourly. So basically each program, so let's see, they need a lockout, tagout, control a hazardous energy program. It's going to be a 3-hour minimum. Here's my hourly rate. And if I do exceed the 3 hours, you're going to know ahead of time so I could get approval or not of if you want me to go on. So that's how I do them. So each program now is going to get a 3-hour minimum. So let's say your hourly is $100 an hour. Each written program, you're going to make $300 minimum, possibly more. And then you just make sure that written program is set for that client. Looking at a seminar, a lot of these are free. I won't kid you. You would probably do a bunch of freebies on there, but if you're going to start charging, if you're going to be a keynote speaker, that's different than just being a speaker on a breakout session. So a keynote speaker, for the most part, is going to make roughly about $3,000 to $5,000 if you're brand new and just getting started as a keynote. But if you're experienced, that could go into 5 digits, 6 digits. So I would say if you're just getting started, you as a keynote, you're roughly about 45-minute presentation, and it's going to be right around 3,000 to 5,000 when you're starting. Webinars. Webinars, it's an hour of your time. You're going to have some Q&A sessions. Generally, the webinar company does some calculation of either percentage. You get a baseline plus a percentage, or they'll give you a flat rate. So you could negotiate if you want. Most of the time they try to, stick everyone with the same rate, but I've refused people from doing webinars because I have my set rate now. So if if they want me, they'll have my set rate. So that's what I do right now. And I've got enough of these speakings that I really could choose. But if you're just starting, you might want to do the percentage and get your foot in the door. But then after that, set your price, and if they want you, they'll pay it. OSHA outreach, I showed you guys how to get that. If you're doing your safety training classes, again, we went over that, but you could do half-day, full-day rates. But I would also include to those rates if you're paying for CEUs, to submit CEUs to an entity. If you're paying for any materials, all that should be extra. So if you're quoting a half-day rate or a full-day rate, that's just what you want. The rest of it, the expenses, should be coming from somewhere else. Business consultation. You will have a lot of businesses wanting to bend your ear and wanting to get your opinion on things. So I break mine down like this. If I can answer your question within a couple of minutes on a phone call, then I won't charge you. However, if it takes research, I'm charging at least a half hour of my rate, and then depending on the research, it could be more. So at least a half hour to an hour is what you're going to do for business consultations. And again, that's something that you're going to save them a lot of money for. My summary is, once you get done with your pricing strategy, I gave you a few different abstracts. I showed you some math. However, you're going to have to sell yourself, and you're also going to have to be committed to your price. So be committed to your price in that don't undersell yourself. However, the other side to that is you could be flexible. So my flexibility has been, why don't you pay me 50 up front? When I'm done with the project, then you could pay the rest. So that helps too. Or milestones. So I get the deposit first, and then at each different milestone, we're going to pay so that I do a submittal, I get a milestone, I do a review of that submittal, when it comes back to me, I get another milestone payment. So that's another way of doing it. Know that you need insurance for government contracts, so make sure that's in there. And if you need to, you should try to help and seek a mentor for some pricing. So that's what I do with my groups that I've started as best as I can. I've been trying to mentor. If you do want to get more help, you could go to safetyconsultant.xyz. So that's I've got a lot of freebies there for safety consultants. Get some templates for free. I got pictures. I got written programs, some PowerPoints. The community isn't there yet, but if you want the free community, you could go to facebook.com/groups and then /safety consultant, no S. So that's the free Facebook community. However, I do mentoring through the mastermind group. So if you do want to be part of the mastermind group, just look for the Join Us tab on safetyconsultant.xyz. Right now, it's $25 for a 14-day trial. So you can check us out, kick the tires, see if that's something you're interested in. I did mention a bunch of things about proposals. If you need a free proposal, go to safetyconsultant.xyz, the-art-of-the-proposal. So as you can see there on the screen. So when you get to the art of proposal, I've got a nice article written out on developer proposal to put in your pricing strategy, make it look good, and then somewhere on that form you could click to get a free proposal template. And these are some of the things I used. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now and check again to see if I have any questions. So I do appreciate everyone hanging out with me. So let me make sure I'm checking the questions. I'll back up a little so I'm not in your face. So right now, I do not see any questions on the actual website, the safety consultant website, so we're good there. YouTube channel, so I'm live. It doesn't look like we have any questions there. So if you do come up with any more questions, then I could say you could either look me up by Sheldon at OSHAcompliancehelp.com, and I also have Sheldon at safetyconsultant.xyz, or you could also just, well, definitely subscribe to the channel. That's good. I need you to subscribe. But other than that, you could find me also on the Facebook. So you got facebook.com, Sheldon Primus, and or facebook.com/groups/safety consultant. So that's what you want. So under the group safety consultant. All right, gang. Well, thanks for hanging in with me. It's actually snowing in Denver today, which is wild because yesterday they had a record high of 81 or 82, and now it's snowing, so go figure. Okay, well, see you guys in the next webinar. Thank you for hanging out with me on this training.